Hey everybody, it's Rad. Today I will be drawing tiger lilies using oil pastels. I got tiger lilies from the shop as reference, plus I'll be using photographs that I took in my neighborhood in New York and a photograph from New Jersey, and then I'll combine the three into one image of a tiger lily. Taking a look at the flower, you can see that the petals are kind of pointed, and there are 6 petals to each flower. I'll be using drawing paper by Strathmore and oil pastels by Sakura called Crepa. So let's start sketching those 6 petals. Notice how they're overlapping a bit. Also notice how the ends of them again are kind of pointy but also rounded pointy. And if they curve over a little bit and looks like they just end abruptly in your drawing, that's how it's going to be. And remember, nature is perfectly imperfect. Okay, then after that I'm going to add the stem, which is basically a line, slightly thick one, and then I'm going to add the leaves underneath the petals, and they are kind of longer than the petals and pointy as well. And I'm going to add a couple of them, a short one and a longer one here. And there we go. Now let's start coloring. First we're going to start with peach, and you're going to add a soft, imperfect layer. This is going to be one of many layers we're going to add to this drawing, and as we do, they're going to start to blend in a little bit, and then some of them will overlap each other. What I would caution not to do at this stage is to press really hard and make it a thick layer of color. We're blending our own colors. The next layer is our local color. The main color something is. We're going to be using orange because that's the color of the flowers. Now this set has a yellowish orange, which I started off with, but I don't know if every set has that, so I'm going to go ahead and use the orange that everybody would have and just do a soft layer like I did before with the peach, but this time with the orange. Now the third layer is yellow to brighten it up, and again you're going to press really softly, and you're going to see now that these colors are going to start to blend in. When you put a lighter color on top of a darker color, the negative spaces will fill in, things will become smoother, it all comes together. Also, as you see here, try to make the edges of your flower be sharp. You don't want them to look hairy. We're not drawing hairy flowers here. Now this may seem like a lot of yellow, and it probably is at this stage, but remember, this is going to blend everything together and smooth things out. And then we're going to put the local color, which is orange, the main color that something is, on top of this flower again for the 4th layer, and things will start to come together at that point. I also want to point out that I am not using my fingers to blend in. Later on maybe you could, but at this stage we're not doing that. We're letting the colors do it for themselves. Okay, so once we have done the yellow layer, we're going to do the 4th layer, which is orange again. The 4th layer is going to be orange, and I am going to be drawing in a direction from the center of the flower to the end, like that, right? So that we are keeping the lines that you see in the actual flower now in the drawing, which is something we hadn't done before. But for this 4th layer, we're going to do that so that the lines all go from the center to the end, all right? And that is going to mimic, once again, what we see in the actual flower. And now you see it's starting to look like the lily with its orange petals. After this, we're going to put in maybe some reddish orange or red to accent the center of them, as you see in the photograph to the left. So in this photograph we see in this section of the flower dark pigment, and we're going to add that by putting in a red and place it in the very same way that you see it in the photograph, with a little space in between them, you see? And the directions of your lines should be going from the center of the flower towards the outer part of it. And again, try to mimic it as best as you can as what you see in the photograph here. Coming up, we're going to be adding our 6th layer, which is going to be purple or violet for shadow. Now, if you look closely at the photograph and at the flower, you will notice that 3 of the petals are overlapping the other 3. Now, to make it look like that is actually happening in the drawing, we're going to be adding some purple very softly in certain sections. Pay attention to how I do this to make it look like 3 of the petals are overlapping the others and causing shadow to happen upon them. This is the part of the drawing where I'm using my own artistic license and imagination, not so much observation. Only add the soft shadow for 3 of the petals. Again, press very softly when you do this. To make the purple look like dark orange, I'm going to overlap some orange on top of it, very softly so that it just blends in. You could even softly overlap a little bit of that red again. I'm going to add some ridges, some texture with some red by softly drawing lines from the inner part of the flower to the outer part. It looks like I forgot to add red to one of the petals. Oops, let me do that now. After this, I'm going to use white to add highlights to the petals. Based on my references, it seems there's more light on the end, so I'm going to add some white to make things lighter. At this point, you could use your own judgment to see what you need to fix. So here I am by adding some more colors to make things a little bit more smoother. I'm adding some yellow to make things brighter. And also putting a lighter color on top of a darker one is going to make things smoother and filled in. So you could do that as well. I'm putting some extra yellow on that center line to make it really stand out. So whatever you need to tweak at this point, here's your chance. Okay, so pretty soon I'm going to be making space for the stamen, which is made up of the anther, the part of the top, and the filament, which is like the line that holds everything up together. And how I'm going to do that is a technique called sgraffito, to scratch off. Watch carefully as I use my yellow to scrape a line of the stamen through all of those layers of oil pastel. So as you see here, I'm scratching in 3 lines to create space for that filament. And then later on top, I will draw the anther. And fill in the bottom portions of those with a little bit of red and leaving the top parts to be light. I decided to add more layers of red because I really wanted this flower to pop, as you see in the photograph. It's up to you. The top portion of the stamen is the anther, which is like a little oval above the filament. Draw those ovals with a brown oil pastel. Brighten up the top part of the filament with a little bit of white. And finally, we're going to color in the stem and the leaves. And you could use any kind of green you have in your set. I started with this darker one here, this olive green, then I realized I should go into the emerald because that's what most people have in their sets. And then I want to add some shading and some highlights. For shading, I'm going to add some purple. And you might be thinking to yourself, what? That's a lot of purple. Well, remember, I'm going to go over it with a local color, which is now, in this case, green. And then by adding green on top, it's just going to make it look like a shadowy green. Could I have pressed darker to make that green? Perhaps, but the true way of doing it as artists do is to use color. And here you see me adding some yellow for brightness, as if it's catching the light from the sun. The top of the flower is adding some shadow to the stem, so let me add some blue on there. Overlap that with a little bit of green again, and that will make it look shadowy. So we're using blue, we're using purple or violet for shadow here, and yellow for brightness, and white for light. At this point, you could use your artistic license, as it were, and your imagination to add in more shadow and some highlights, and finish the leaves as you see fit. So there you have it. We have used many layers of oil pastel to create a somewhat realistic looking flower with a density of color that you could only achieve with those said layers. Thank you so much for watching, and now it's your turn to draw a flower. I've got 2 words for you. Get crackin'.